Again.
All right, round two. I'm excited about this. Thank you for listening to the 30-second video snippet because we haven't technologically advanced past the Stone Age. I am Derek Thompson. With me, as always, is Mr. TJ Davidson.
Hello.
And with us tonight as our special guest is Barbara Sim. We are very excited to have you. You'll be our first female guest. I feel like I've said this before or something. I don't know. This is weird.
Yeah, no pressure, but we're expecting good shit from you, okay? No.
Anyways, we'll start this whole thing for the second time, thanks to some technical difficulties. But I'm excited to have you here. Let's just get your story, where you're from, what got you to where you are.
Yeah. Man, okay. It's so hard to encapsulate it. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
So. Better than what I would have come up with.
A lot of shit to put into a little bit of time. Okay. Born in Wisconsin. Moved to Scotland when I was a toddler. Lived in Florida, Oklahoma, and Texas. Back to Florida, then South Carolina. I grew up mostly in South Carolina, so usually when people say, where are you from? I say mostly South Carolina. It just keeps it simple because nobody wants to hear the whole backstory of my childhood just from one simple question.
We do. We're always here.
Well, we were not a military family. I mean, my dad was Army, but he wasn't around. So mostly the reason that we moved around was my mom, every time she got divorced, she would move.
Fair enough.
And, she also, my aunt lived in Oklahoma. So we moved out there to be close to them. And then we had family in Texas for a little bit and Florida. So yeah, we just moved around a lot. I grew up loving, still to this day, one of my favorite sounds is when you close your eyes and you're in the back seat of the car and you can hear the tires on the pavement and the murmur of people talking in the front seat. That's my favorite sound. It's so soothing.
Oh, I can see that.
We had a big old station wagon growing up, so we weren't in seatbelts or anything. She just folded the seats down and made it into this big comfy bed, and all three, me and my two sisters, would just hang out in the back.
No, you get the mom seatbelt. When something happens, they get the arm across the chair. You know what I mean?
Oh no, we were in the back.
Oh, use clear in the back. I got the mom seatbelt. I got a hand across the chest and felt like I got punched in the stomach.
The only sound I was used to hearing when I was in the back seat was radio chatter from dispatch and stuff like that, and officers talking to other officers. And
Oh, I get it.
Was your mom or dad police officer?
No, I think PJ saying he was a troublemaker.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's okay.
But yeah, so I graduated in South Carolina.
Okay, and, so you spent most of your time in South Carolina.
Yeah, from fourth, fifth grade to graduation, a big chunk.
Yeah, that is a large chunk.
Yeah.
I think last time you said you have a lot of family in Scotland.
Yeah, so my dad, his whole side, even today, my aunt and my cousins and my grandma and grandpa, my grandma and grandpa passed away now, but they were all over there. And then my grandma on my mom's side lived in Scotland. And my mom spent her childhood between Scotland and Florida, between her mom and dad.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I actually have a half-brother in Scotland that I've never met. His name is Lewis. He's 20 now, and I learned about him when he was 14.
It's not Louis Capaldi, is it?
No.
Okay, I just wanted to check.
The Bruce?
No, but I had to meet him.
Had to make sure.
I do hope to meet him. It's just crazy, you have a half sibling that you never met.
Yeah, I just found out my mom has 6 half siblings she's never met. So,
man,
Yeah. Talk about crazy.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Are they all from the same parent?
Same dad, yeah.
Okay.
Which is just a wild thing. She never met her real dad, so the whole thing's crazy to me.
That is crazy. Which men can go about and have like a billion kids they don't know about.
Yeah, thankfully I haven't done that.
That you know of.
That I'm aware of. Yeah.
I was gonna say, you don't know.
I'd like to think I have a general clue.
Yeah, that's all we need is just more anxiety piled onto what we already
Yeah,
know.
great. Now I have more anxiety and depression.
Is that the Ancestry and the 23andMe? They've got everybody finding out shit they don't want to know.
Yeah, that's how we found out about my mom's half siblings was the ancestry. That's
Wow.
also how I found out I'm mostly Scottish.
Me too. I'm 74% Scottish.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
My dad's so pissed off. He thought he was German all this time, and then he found out he's like mostly Scottish. He was like, "You gotta be shitting me."
Is he of any German?
No, not really.
Well, dang.
My
My
thought
dad
it
was
was
mostly
more
pissed off when he
Italian
found out that he wasn't
Yeah.
actually my dad, you know. I tell you what, that ancestry shit, it's rough these days.
It's wild. It's crazy. All right, so we graduated from South Carolina.
Yeah.
I think that's where we left off here.
Yeah.
What happens next?
Well, I was in the Army National Guard, so I did split op. I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to get out of where I was. I don't do well in small towns. I have
Really?
I have a gypsy gene, I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah. So my older sister joined the Army, so I just kind of followed along, and I joined the Army National Guard. I got general discharge 2 years later because I missed my AIT day. So I did boot camp between senior year, and then I was a cheerleader my senior year, and I busted my knee, and I missed my AIT day. And you have to be like fully trained within a year. And they told me, general discharge, you can come back in a year and try again. Well, one of my friends, she told me about a job down in Florida that I could do. And I used to want to be a magazine editor. I just loved writing, and I thought it'd be fun to be a magazine editor. And she told me there was a magazine job down in Florida. And so she gave me the number. I called them up. They busted me down there. Don't ask me where my mom was or my stepdad.
Doing things.
So my stepdad, I've had 2 stepdads, one real dad, 2 stepdads. None of them were worth anything to mention. And my mama, I love her to death, and she's one of the strongest women I know. But there was a time growing up where she was addicted to pain medication, and she attempted an overdose when I was in 11th grade. And so she had her own battles that she was dealing with. And I think she did her best, but there was a lot of stuff that we just kind of figured out on our own because,
You had to.
we had to. Unfortunately, I was kind of naive and gullible growing up. I was just sweet little old Barbara, didn't know what was going on in the world, I guess. But I went down to Florida, and it ended up being a magazine sales door-to-door scam, basically. This guy that was running it, he was shady as hell. He was on cocaine, I think, some kind of drug. There was a bunch of kids. We were supposed to pretend we were in high school, our senior year, selling magazines to get on our senior cruise was the spiel that we were supposed to give. And I was like, well, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, but I didn't have any way of getting out of there. And this is before cell phones and all that jazz. So, I was like, I'm gonna raise up enough money, save up enough money to get out of here. So I kept doing what I had to do, and had about $300 saved. The boss was really creepy. He would get drunk and hit on me in very aggressive ways, and I would avoid him, and I'd tell the other kids, I was like, this guy's weird, keep me away from him. And I was 18, 19 at the time. And I remember we were in Florida, and we were at a hotel, and I had one drink. Don't ask me how I had a drink at 19 at the hotel bar, but my boss bought me a drink, and I remember feeling way more drunk than I should have after one drink.
Right.
Like, I'm going to go back to my room, and I went into the elevator. I ended up getting abducted off the elevator by 2 guys. and held for 2 days and like
Jesus.
assaulted. And then they just left, went back to wherever they came from, and I went back to my room. Everybody's like, "Where did you go? What happened to you?" And I didn't want to tell anybody. I don't know if it was shock or just embarrassment or whatever bullshit happens when you're in shock and that shit happens. I didn't tell anybody. I just wanted to get out of there. About 2 weeks later, the boss, we were in a different hotel, he came into the room and he told everybody to leave, and he trapped me and he pushed me on the bed. And I remember bouncing up off the bed and using that momentum to duck up under him and run into the bathroom. And I did not leave that bathroom until the police came. My friend called the police for me. The police came, knocked on the door. I told him what happened. He bought me a bus ticket home. I wish I remember the policeman's name. I don't remember a lot of details about that time of my life. The brain has a weird way of protecting you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sure that a lot of that's a protective measure.
Yeah. And I didn't tell anybody these stories for years. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't tell anybody for years and years and years. But he got me out of there. He bought me a bus ticket. So if he's watching this and he remembers, thank you, sir. But yeah, so I got back to my mom and I was like, I want to be in the military. I want to do something bigger than myself. I want to feel bigger than myself. I want to be around honorable people. I want to have a better mission. Like, I need to get out of where I'm at. So I wanted to join the Air Force. And I went to the recruiter. They weren't hiring. Oh Lord. They weren't taking prior service. So I was walking out of the Air Force office and there was a Marine Corps recruiter smoking. And he said, "Are you joining the Air Force?" And I said, "No, they won't take me." And he said, "Well, we'll take you." And he threw a cigarette down. He said, "Come on in." And I was like, "Wait, isn't Marines just infantry?" And I literally at the time thought that Marines were only infantry. Like, I thought only boys could join the Marine Corps. I didn't know much of the world.
To be fair, kind of makes sense. If any branch, you had to assume that about.
Yeah, like I just thought they were like, badass, balls to the wall, no girls allowed. But
Let my tree fort.
So he brought me in there and he showed me some of the job options, and my top 3 options were Intel, public relations, and my third option was logistics, which I ended up getting logistics. Yeah,
So it's the third choice.
It was my third choice. Yeah. He said that Intel and public relations weren't taking women at that time, but looking back, I think he just had, a quota to fill. So I got logistics, and I'm not mad about it. I liked my job. I've shipped off to boot camp in June of 2005. Paris Island, Platoon 4027, Oscar Company.
Oh,
Yeah. Graduated. I went to MCT. I broke my feet twice in MCT.
Jeezy, crazy.
Like on doing hikes or what?
Yeah. So this is like a hot debate item because I talk to people about like women don't belong in the military, they can't hack it. And I kind of agree to an extent. I feel like there's certain jobs that we excel at and we belong in, but our bodies aren't made to do some of the things that are required. We're just like, we physically aren't built for that kind of load.
Right.
And not all women. Some women are badass and their bodies can handle it, but I think in general, the woman's physique, the way our hips are built, the way our bones are made, like, I think women do have like more fragile bones. I don't know. Don't quote me on this because I'm not a scientist or medical.
Yeah, medically and scientifically speaking, I totally see what you're saying. But you're also like 10 times smarter than, like me and TJ. So,
Right.
I mean, we all have our strengths. I'm not saying women are the weaker, sex, but
yeah, it's like strengths versus weaknesses.
Yeah, and like in the military, like you use your people to their strengths to further the mission. It shouldn't be about your pride or your ego. Like, oh, I can do that. No, like, if you can't fucking do it, don't do it because you're gonna hurt the mission, right? Well, when I was in the broke platoon for a little bit, I mean, there was women that like their femurs snapped carrying too much weight because their frame couldn't handle it. So there's things like that you have to think about. And I'm not. There's going to be so many women coming after me. But yeah, so my feet, my metatarsals like just like they snapped under the weight.
Oh,
And I remember on the hike, it was like on the 10 mile, like the final hike. I was like $125 back then. I think my pack was like 80, 100 pounds. And I was hiking, and then I felt my feet just snap under me, and I kept trying to hike, and I kept trying to go, and it was like slow motion where I just kept going lower and lower to the ground till I was crawling. And the instructor was like yelling at me to get up, and I would try to put weight on my foot, and I'd collapse. And I'd keep trying. I was literally crawling, trying to keep up with the march. And they finally just put me in the back of the Humvee, and they thought I was just being a weak ass, but I took my boots off, and my feet were like so swollen. And I remember the instructor looking at me like, "Holy shit, Sam! Like, why didn't you tell me?" I'm like, I don't know what happened.
I don't know. I didn't.
But
I didn't.
I had a cast on my left foot and a boot on my right foot. And I came back to training in crutches. And I was in the broke platoon for a bit. And then I finally finished the hike, and I got to the fleet. And I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan. And as soon as I was checking into my duty station, first sergeant was like, "Are you ready to deploy to Iraq?" And I'm like, "I mean, do I have a choice?" Which I was mad at it.
This sounds much better than my "Hello, you're going to Afghanistan." Sounds much more pleasant.
Yeah. So when I got to my unit, I was one of 2 females in a LS platoon in Okinawa at Camp Foster.
Jeez.
And we deployed. Well, we trained in Mount Fuji, so I climbed Mount Fuji. And I remember I was so new to the unit that nobody really knew me yet. Like when we were hiking Mount Fuji, everybody got to the top, and I ended up hanging out with people from another unit, and I didn't know it because I didn't know my unit. And when I got to the top, I got my little stamp and I got my little souvenir thing, and I look around and nobody's there. Everybody left me at the top of the mountain, and I start going down, and I'm like trying to figure out which way I'm supposed to go. And my Corporal Cal, hey Corporal Cal, he came up the mountain and found me. He was like, "We're all at the bottom, Sam." I'm like, "Oh shit, you guys left me."
But you didn't break your feet, so that's a win.
It was so embarrassing though, like, but nobody really
We'll chalk
knew.
that up to a failure of leadership. That wasn't your fault.
All right, we'll blame it on them.
Your corporal failed you.
Yeah, your NCOs. They just. I'm sure they've learned since then.
I was just wandering around the mountain, exploring.
Hey, somebody's got to. I mean, it makes sense to me. That's probably what I would do too. I'd just disappear.
I mean, if you look at what I'm doing now, it makes sense, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, you're still wandering around the mountain, right?
I'm always wandering.
Hey, me too. Been a lot of places recently. I get that.
Nice. Where's your most favorite?
Honestly, Nebraska's pretty up there. It's home. You know what I mean? Did a lot of traveling and moving places, and then I was like, I need to be somewhere for a little bit. That's a little bit. I'm still ready to get out there and wander some more, but I need a little bit of a break.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it's time that he's about to come down here and hang out with all of his Oklahomies for a little while.
Yeah, I'm going to go hang out with my Oklahomies for a bit here next. That's my next move.
I love that. Yeah, I don't have anywhere that I think of as home, which is fine.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I was going to say, you said you were a gypsy, so.
Mm-hmm. I like to say that home is where my mama is, and she just moved to Alabama. So I didn't grow up in Alabama. I've never lived there, but that's where my mom is. So.
Alabama's home now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Going home to my mama.
That makes sense. That actually makes a lot of sense. Man, that's kind of why Nebraska's home to me. And my parents are both here still, so.
That makes sense. I like that.
I like family. Family's important.
It is important. I'm in a constant group text with my mom and 2 sisters.
My dad would punch me in the face if I put him in a group chat.
I'm in a separate text with my dad, which is new. because my dad left when I was 2, and then I met him officially when I was 16. And then he's like in and out of our lives, and I'm not going to go into it because I'm not going to bash him on the air. But we're getting there.
That's good.
Especially this last year, there's been a little progress, which I'm happy about.
Well, that's great.
That's good.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's crazy that if you think about it, like we're all just human beings trying to live our lives and do better. And we all go through shit. And when you get older, you start to learn, your parents' stories, and you start to learn more about them, and you realize, especially when you start becoming their age that they were when they were going through that shit, it's like, holy crap. So it's like it's a whole different kind of perspective. So I've learned a lot about my dad that explains a lot about what happened. So.
Yeah, I feel that because I think back and I'm like, man, it makes a lot of sense now because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing either right now. So
yeah, my mom had all 3 of us girls by the time she was 27, and I cannot imagine.
Yeah, I can't either. I have a saying that, and I get a lot of crap for it depending on the person, but I like to think that people are always making the best decision that they can make at a given time.
I say the same thing, but I say people are doing the best they can with what they know.
And I get so much crap for it because people are like, well, why would they make this decision? You're like, because that was the best decision they could make for themselves at that given time.
Yeah.
Like
they were trying to judge from the outside.
Yeah. Like they were trying to do their best. And so, given the choices they were given in their mind, it was the best decision they could make. So I don't think no one goes into a situation like, I'm going to do the wrong thing.
Yeah. Or I'm going to totally fuck this up on purpose.
Yeah. People would probably disagree with that based off my choices.
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes it's the only thing I'm really good at is just fucking it up. So that's what I go with.
Do it on purpose.
Yeah, but I don't do
stick
it
with
on purpose.
What you know.
I just do what I know. Yeah.
Oh.
That's exactly what it is.
Sometimes I make just choices and I'm like, looking back, I'm like, what the fuck? What just happened? And I can't even like recall what my thought processes was in the moment.
Right.
95% of the time for me.
Well, I think a lot of times that's your survival skills.
Right. It's that fight or flight kind of thing.
Yeah. And when you've had trauma in your life, that's kind of warped your fight, flight, freeze. And I think for a long time I didn't have fight or flight, I had freeze. And so I'd come across a situation and I just couldn't do anything. I couldn't make any decision. I couldn't, think straight. It would be like a freeze, brain, So we do the best we can with what we know, and
yeah, I mean, that's all we can do.
Hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really easy to look back at a situation and be like, yeah, I should have done this.
Right.
But I did.
The whole shoulda, woulda, coulda,
Mm-hmm.
We can't live in the past. Nick Winga, who was on our podcast, said it, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Anxiety is worrying about the future, and depression is worrying about the past.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always resonated with me since then. And it comes back to that 20/20 hindsight thing where I'm like, yeah, I look back and I'm like, you screwed up, and that makes me depressed. So I'm like, I need to understand that a little bit better. That, I made those decisions, and I need to really buy into my own thing where I'm like, I made those decisions at the time because I thought it was in the best interest of myself.
Well, it'd be really nice if we could fully comprehend that and live our lives according to that, because you can't change the past and you can't change the future. I mean, you can influence it to an extent, but overall, you don't really have any control over it. So, I mean, there's no reason to be depressed over the past or have anxiety about what you don't have full control over in the future either,
Right. I like that. That was really intuitive of you.
Yeah, not that wasn't very TJ, was it?
Yeah.
So what just happened?
Sorry, I won't do it again.
It's not even just about like I made the best choice in the moment, but like I look back at some parts of my life and I didn't have a lot of self-worth for a long time. Like, so if you don't believe that you're worth anything, then you don't fight for yourself and you put yourself in the worst situations, because who the fuck cares what happens?
Yeah.
Right.
What's it really matter, right? You know.
Like, what does it matter? Exactly. I remember I have a lot of sexual trauma in my history, and I just felt like I was just like a piece of shit and nobody cared about me and I wasn't worth anything. And I would hang out. I told my sister the other day, I was like, I would hang out in the seediest bars and like the sketchiest places because that's where I thought I belonged.
Right.
And I didn't give a shit what happened to me. And I was like, you know what? Who cares? Like, let the worst happen because the worst already happened.
Right.
So it's that space, that mindset that you kind of fall into sometimes, just trying to survive or not even knowing where to go from. I don't know if it's like a shock thing or I'm still working through some of that shit, but I didn't start healing until I believed that I was healing.
Well, it's kind of crazy to me that people tend to think that their trauma is their fault. You know what I mean? Like that's what has always kind of baffled me on that. If we could kind of figure that out, along with how to keep people from killing themselves, which is what we're trying to do here. But
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of well-intentioned people that try to say, you know, your choices lead you to the places that you go. And so taking responsibility for whatever happens to you, like, well, you joined the military. That was your choice to join the military. And I think even though it's well-intentioned and there is power behind taking control of your choices, when you're in a space where you're just like at the low of the low, you don't want to hear like, well, this is your fault.
Right.
right,
You brought yourself here. What are you complaining about?
Well, and part of that too comes back to like I only control myself. I don't control
Yeah.
what other people do,
exactly.
and that it sucks because
Yeah.
I can control what my intentions are, but I don't have the opportunity to control what everyone else's intentions are.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time, a lot of people do have good intentions, you know, but it only takes one or two people with bad intentions to ruin everything for you or for somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, and you can take responsibility. I'm gonna use that loosely on
Right.
putting yourself in a certain situation, but at the same time, you didn't. No one's putting themselves in a situation to be fully taken advantage of or
Hurt.
raped or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's at the same time, it's not your fault. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I was saying with we always try to make the best decision for us. I don't think anyone ever goes into a situation and is like, I want to get hurt.
Right.
Yeah. But I think, at least for myself, I can't speak for everybody, but a lot of the time you find yourself in those kind of situations. One, maybe because you're just naive or you just think the best of people and you put yourself in a situation hoping that they're good people and then they end up not being good people. Especially in the veteran community where you want to have faith in your fellow veterans and think that they're
Right.
good people, and then it ends up being really bad and you can't trust just anybody.
Right.
Um, but then there's also situations where, for instance, when I was married and I felt trapped in my marriage and I kind of rebelled a little bit and I went out and my husband was away at training and I went out to karaoke and I invited a whole bunch of people back to the apartment and only a handful of them showed up. And I'm a very kind person and I didn't want to be a bitch and be like, well, you guys need to leave because it was just men. And I was like, well, you can have a few beers and then we got to go. So we all ended up hanging out. We were drinking beers, whatever, we were playing games. And then two of them started fighting and I kicked everybody out. I was like, this isn't cool. You guys need to leave. They left. And then I went to bed and I woke up to them breaking in and they robbed me. And one of them assaulted me. And so in that situation, I invited those people into my place. And I remember my ex-husband saying that I was, disrespectful to him for inviting people over when he wasn't there. And it's like those kind of decisions looking back, it was like, okay, I could have done better. That wasn't very smart. It
But at
wasn't
the same time, you didn't go into that situation expecting, what happened. You went
exactly.
into it expecting to have a good time and just to have, kind of a retreat from whatever. And
But I can take responsibility for the choices that I made that led to that. Like,
right,
maybe don't do that again. Maybe be more careful. Maybe be more cautious. But I don't have to take responsibility for the actions of those people that did harm.
right, exactly.
Because you
And
have
so,
absolutely no control over anybody else's actions but your own. So
yeah. And so it's just learning those hard lessons, but also not carrying the shame or guilt attached to those certain actions.
Yeah, absolutely. I was
And for
gonna
a long
make
time, that was very hard. Like my ex-husband, he told me this doesn't happen to normal people. And that stuck with me for so long. I was like, well, I'm just fucked up, I guess.
yeah, and I think that's a lot of like kind of mental abuse kind of thing, if that makes sense. Because you,
I think it was
you
from a place
don't
of
say
fear.
that, and
yeah,
to say that that doesn't happen to normal people, it does.
Yeah. Well, I think it was a place of fear. And he grew up very sheltered. And so in his world, that didn't happen.
Right.
And so it was just a lack of understanding. We were both very young, early 20s, like 23, 24. Um, and I'm not like excusing how he treated me. Like, um, he could have done better, but I could have done better.
Yeah, we can always all do better. I
Yeah.
mean, I, I try to take responsibility for my actions, and my divorces. I definitely screwed up. I played my part. I totally understand what you're saying, but at the same time, there's also a huge part, kind of like in what TJ was saying, in not blaming like ourselves for everything. We don't have to take all the responsibility.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of power in accepting your responsibility, but not attaching the shame and guilt to it. Because
Which makes sense.
that's what
Yeah,
weighs you
yeah,
down. Because when you say, hey, I did this for this reason, for whatever reason or no reason, these were my actions. They weren't the best. I can do better. You move on from there. You don't hang yourself with shame and guilt. And that's where a
right,
lot of people get stuck, is because they beat themselves up. Like, I'm a shitty person because I did this. I don't deserve success or happiness or life because I did this. And so you have to understand that, like, you can fuck up. Like, we're all human. And I don't know y'all's religious affiliation. I'm a Christian. Um, and when I moved to Colorado in 2017, I connected with a nonprofit called Advancing Warriors. And they help veterans, active military, and first responders combat PTSD using biblical principles.
hmm
And when I connected with them, like up to that point, I'd had so much therapy. I'd been inpatient twice. I'd been trying to work through my stuff, and it all came back to that like shame and guilt and self hate and self worth. And like, I need to fix myself. I need to fix this. I need to take control of this and this. I need to do something. And when I connected with this Advancing Warriors, I was able to reconnect with God and understand my worth was through Him, my identity in Christ. My power was limited, but His was eternal and unlimited. When I started leaning more into my faith, I don't know, it was just like it was a shift in my mentality. It was a weight off of my shoulders almost. And I know this won't
right,
resonate with everybody, but it was a turning point in my healing journey because I started to understand grace and
right,
forgiveness, which translated into self forgiveness. Because if God can forgive me, why can't I forgive myself? Why
right,
can't I forgive those who did harm against me? And that was a huge turning point. It was like, these people who hurt me, they were hurting. They're humans. They have lives and hopes and dreams, and I'm not excusing their actions, but I pray for them, and I hope that they grow, and I hope that they learn and be better. We can all do better, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
To
It was
me,
just,
I think the best thing about bad situations like that is you can always use those as a learning opportunity. One way or another. Maybe you learn that maybe I shouldn't do that again because some bad shit might happen. You know,
right.
so at least
Without
there's some
attaching I'm a shit person.
right.
So, all right. So we've dove into this pretty
Yeah, I dove
deep,
deep there.
and I appreciate that. And
Keeping us on track.
we're gonna not dive any less deep, I guess. But we were kind of talking about the military and the Marine Corps, and
Mm-hmm.
there's goods and bads that came with it. And
Mm-hmm.
you're our first female that we've had on. We'd kind of like to get your experience with the Marine Corps and what came with that and how it was for you. We're two males, in a very male oriented military. And, especially still when we were in, it wasn't what it is today from what we've seen, where it was a little bit more, and especially when you were in, it was a little bit more still very male oriented. They weren't, I don't know, everything's very politically correct these days. There's a lot of different things going on now. But when you were in, how did it go for you?
All right. I will start off by saying that my experience isn't every woman's experience.
Right.
My experience is based off of my own personality and my own past and my perspective. I was very shy growing up, a little naive and gullible. I'd already been through some trauma, as we discussed, and I was just looking for, you know, good people, honorable people. I got to the fleet. I was one of two females. So when I got there was one other female. And I remember walking up to the barracks, and she walked up and she was dating. She was a Lance Corporal. I was Lance Corporal, and she was dating a corporal. So it was kind of hush hush. But they'd gone through school together and stuff. And then he picked up rank. But I remember her looking at me and be like, "Who is this bitch?" like I kind of was on her turf, So we had like a rocky start. We didn't really like each other, and I just wanted to fit in, and I wanted to make friends. And she was kind of off with her boyfriend, so I was trying to talk to some of the guys. And my friend Stack, he kind of took me under his wing, and we'd be like marching to the chow hall, and he would quiz me on Marine Corps knowledge and talk about, the base and what to expect and the job and everything like that. It was completely professional. And we got called into the first sergeant's office within a week of me being in the fleet for fraternization. And so first sergeant told me I couldn't spend alone time with him because he was a corporal and I was Lance Corporal. And so there was like 3 Lance Corporals, the 2 females and then 1 male. And so it kind of limited who I could talk to now. So I'm very isolated. It isolated me very quickly within my unit because I was afraid to talk to anybody. I didn't know who I could talk to. And then to add a little confusion, this is a fucked up story. I don't know if I should share it.
Share
My
away.
my first weekend in the fleet, 2 of my sergeants snuck me. This is in Okinawa. They snuck me out of the barracks window and into a honcho to go out on Gate 2 Street. They take me to this bar down this alley. I have my first drink of sake. It turned out it wasn't a bar; it was a brothel. I look this way, and this woman lifts her skirt up and shows me her hoo-ha, and asked me if I like it, and I said no, thank you. So I ran to the bathroom, and I go in there, and one of the sergeants came in behind me and pushed me up against the wall and tried to fill me up. And then the second sergeant came behind him and was like, "What's going on here?" And I dipped under the one guy's arm and went back out. and sat back at the bar and finished my sake, and then they went off in the back room with whoever they were with. And then I got really drunk off sake. It was like 1 cup of sake. It was strong. And then
I
we
mean,
left.
it's not weak.
No. And then we left and we got a honcho back to base and we snuck back in the barracks windows. And that was like my
Oh
first
my
weekend in the
gosh.
fleet.
That's wild.
It was crazy.
And again, just comes back to intentions. And like, I'm just like, I don't understand.
Well, no, and it was so confusing because like that week I'd been in trouble for talking to the corporal, completely innocent, talking about Marine Corps knowledge. I really wanted to be a good Marine.
Right.
And I wanted to find out how I could, earn rank, do good, like impress my, NCOs or whatever. And then that weekend, 2 of my NCOs do that. And it's like you had to be one person off hours and then one person on hours. And not saying everybody was shit. Like, and I didn't know what I was doing either. Like, of course, you see a guy you're attracted to, you're like, you want to flirt with them, but you're like, should I not? Have a few beers,
Right.
maybe I can. So it's like, it was so confusing all the time. I never knew what I was doing. And that goes back to like some women, they were taught growing up how to stand up for themselves and how to, be a strong woman. And I just never felt like I got that training. My mom relied on men. So it's like, you're not worth anything unless you have a man.
Yeah. And I was going to say, it seems like you kind of had to teach yourself.
Yeah. So there was that whole part of it that was kind of playing its part. But I think I did okay. And then, like, obviously, right away we were training for Iraq, and then we went to Iraq. And it was really funny because everybody thought I was like fooling around in Iraq, and I did not fool around with anybody in Iraq. I was good, and I did my job, and I was very focused. And I connected with the other female when I was in Iraq because we shared a can, right? We worked on a flight line in Al Asad, and we were close quarters. I mean, she had a boyfriend, and so sometimes I'd come back from work. I worked a night shift. She worked day shift, so we were kind of on different shifts. But I'd come back from work, and she'd be like, with her man in our can. So I had to there was a little baseball field out behind the barracks area, the cans, and I'd just go lay down on the baseball bench and watch the stars. Because I don't know if y'all been to Iraq, but the stars are insane.
Been to Afghanistan. Stars were insane there as well.
Yeah, it's just a wide open desert with clear skies. It's insane.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times when I was out stargazing, people thought I was doing other stuff. And then I volunteered when I was in Iraq. I volunteered for Task Force Lioness. And I was scared. Like when they approached us, they approached me and the other female. And I wasn't sure I wanted to do it. And she talked me into it. She was like, you're going to regret it if you don't do it. If you don't just go for it. So I ended up doing it. And I had to go first because she picked up corporal. And they didn't need any corporals for the first round. So I went out. We went to Haditha Dam. We flew to Haditha Dam, and then we convoyed out to Haqqaniya, which is where I was at. And I was attached to 2-3 Marines.
Hang on. So is that where they take female Marines to search females, or
Females and children. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was part of the what's it called? Where you want to be like the peace and something.
The hearts and minds.
Yeah, something like that.
So yeah,
Nothing wrong with hearts and minds, I guess.
Yeah, they just want to be culturally appropriate because the men couldn't touch the women, and
right.
and they knew that, so they would hide a lot of stuff in the women's garments.
Right.
And all. So yeah, I went out there in January of 2007, and I was with them for a month, and that month is my favorite time in the Marine Corps. It was the scariest time, but it was my favorite time because the grunts treated me like a Marine. Like we were out there, we were in it, we were doing the shit. Like they treated me like a Marine.
Just out there doing Marine shit.
Yeah. And I was with a group of women, and up to that point, I didn't know a lot of women Marines, and I had women leaders. And so they would talk to me and teach me and guide me and support me. And it was just It was my favorite time in the Marine Corps. I loved it. I didn't experience anything too traumatic while I was out there. I mean, there was like kids that would throw grenades over the walls, and I remember sitting in like the little room where they had the computers, and they had sandbags in the windows, and the grenades would go off, and there'd be like dust flying off the walls and stuff, and I'm just like looking around like nobody else is freaking out, so I tried not to freak out.
Yeah, nothing too traumatic. Just little kids trying to kill you and shit like that.
I know. I was
Nothing
like,
dramatic about that.
they just got off school. They're gonna throw grenades for fun.
Yeah, God, it's like those little kids from the Nightmare Before Christmas.
Children of the Corn.
It was crazy, and they
Children of
actually
the Opium Fields.
went out and caught one of the kids, and they brought him to his parents, and his parents walked him through town and disowned him. That poor
Really?
like, it's heartbreaking because he's a child. He's so impressionable, and somebody got to him and taught him that throwing grenades was the right thing to do.
Yeah,
Or
I
you
say a lot of that comes.
Think about all the
from,
dumb shit we did as teenagers. Like, we just trying to rebel. I
would say a
don't know.
lot of that comes from the leadership over there. I mean, a lot of what they teach, it comes from the religious teachings where they don't get a real education. They just get whatever what are they called? The religious leaders, what are they called?
The Quran?
Yeah,
No.
well, they learn from the Quran, but who are the religious leaders over there? Like the
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I'm failing you
We're
on
all
this one.
failing right now.
we're all failing on Mid-Eastern culture right now.
It's
We've
been
all
a
been
minute,
there.
all right.
It has been a minute.
It's only been like 12 years for us, right?
It was 2007, so however long that was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even
that's
longer.
a long time, even longer.
Yeah. Because what is it like? I think females after the age of 11 aren't allowed to go to school anymore, or might even be younger than that.
Yeah, so that was an interesting part of being able to search the females, is I was able to talk to them through the interpreter, and that was one of my favorite parts, was getting to talk to the women. And I remember them saying, the younger women, younger as in like under 50, they all wanted us there. They wanted education, they wanted freedom, they wanted to be able to do what they could, live their lives. The women over, like the older women, they were scary. Like, they scared me. They were like spitting at us, like saying, no, we don't want you here, go home, like, we like our lives. They were kind of indoctrinated a lot. So
I mean, I can only imagine like the younger women there, you were like the Oprah or the Rihanna to them. Like, they all probably wanted to be you. Like, look what you're doing, as a woman,
Yeah,
and
as
then
a
where they
female.
come from. You know what I'm saying? Like, that had to have been mind blowing to them.
it was definitely insane. And so there was one woman who was very intense. She was very tall, long brown hair under her garment, and she had her arms out. And I remember we had to search her because she had a hard arm, and we had to make sure it wasn't like a device. It ended up being a amputated arm, that she had like
No shit.
The prosthetic.
Thank you, words. But I had to hold her baby. It was a toddler, and then my other Marine female, she had to search her. And so I'm like holding this little, probably less than 2, but a toddler baby, and I can't hold it like a real baby because I'm in full gear, right? And I have a rifle hung over my shoulder. And I was like, I felt like a monster, like, because the baby's crying, and I'm trying to like rock it a little bit, and like, it's okay. And I'm looking at his mom like, I'm not gonna hurt him, like, but also, are you gonna kill us? Is there a bomb in this baby? It's like so crazy.
Yeah, you're like hitting the baby with the rifle in the face, and you're just like, I'm so sorry.
No.
I'm not gonna hurt it, but if it starts ticking, I'm throwing it.
Yeah, but if I start hearing ticks, game over.
It's just such a crazy place to be mentally. Like, you have to think about the risks and like the threat, but they're also humans, and it's a baby. Like, but they would hide bombs in babies. They would hide bombs on women. They would drug the women and make them suicide bombers.
Yeah, it's like you want to give them candy, but you can't.
Yeah. It's just insane to think about. And then what ended up happening was the other female from my unit, her name was Corporal Jennifer Purcell, and she ended up going out into the Lioness in the group that replaced my group, and so we kind of crossed paths at Haditha Dam. And I remember I wasn't able to talk to her because when I was going out, she was coming in and she was sleeping. And I went in there and I saw her in her bed and I was like, I don't want to bother. I don't want to wake her up to say bye or give her, a hug or anything. Because at that point we'd bonded a little bit more. She was teaching me yoga. We were becoming friends. At least I thought so. Who knows? Her unit went out to Barwana, which was on the other side of Haklania from where I was. It was like the Euphrates, like Haditha Dam, Euphrates, and then Barwana's on one side and Haklania's on the other.
Right.
So she ended up being killed by a suicide bomber like 4 days into her lioness. And I remember I got okay, I'm showing my age. She sent me a MySpace message.
Hey, I'm right there with you. I totally understand that.
I got back to Al Assad and I was checking my messages, and she had sent me a MySpace message saying that, she had a bad feeling and she was asking me for advice. And I messaged her back, like, you're going to be fine. Like, don't stand out in the open. Just listen to the grunts and do what they tell you to. And she ended up being killed at the traffic control point, standing out in the open. Her and a Master Sergeant Alice, I think it was. Excuse me. And then like 8 Iraqi soldiers. And it hit our unit hard because we were logistics. Like, I feel like any death hits every unit hard.
Right.
Grunts, you kind of, the risk a little bit more. It's not any easier, obviously, to lose your brothers, but we were logistics. Like, we weren't expecting to lose anybody. We worked on a flight line. And I think for the men, it was a little bit harder losing a female. And then her boyfriend had actually planned to propose to her, and he had his ring ready for when they got back to Okinawa. And I remember they brought us all in, and the captain didn't know that they were dating because remember they were low key because they were different ranks.
Yeah.
And he told us all in a group. And I remember, like, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this when you get bad news or something horrible happens. It's like this wave of energy kind of knocks you back a little bit. That kind of happened. And I remember looking over, like, in shock, and I just watched him drop to his knees. And he just lost it. And I remember looking at this poor captain. He's like, this was like his first deployment, like, he was in charge of people for the first time kind of thing. And his eyes just went big because he had no idea the connection. And so I felt so bad for him too, given that news and not realizing the impact. It was horrible. It was awful. And it was 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. No, it was 2 weeks before we went home. But she really wanted to do the lioness. So she went out right before we were going to go home. And she was such a badass Marine. She was like $120 maybe. She was itty bitty, but she was so much. Like in this tiny package. She could do like 20 pull-ups with her full gear on. She was going to college while she was in Iraq. She'd be doing like night watch and like reading her books and studying. She adopted a little tiger, and she kept like the stuffed tiger with her. She was a cool person.
That's incredible.
20 years old.
Really is.
And I had really bad survivor's guilt for a long time because I was new to the unit. And I was like, well, if I'd have died, it wouldn't hurt everybody as much because nobody would have cared as much.
Right.
But I remember talking to my staff sergeant he was a little sexist. We never really had the best relationship, but I do remember the one time that he was like human with me and like kind was right after that. And I was talking to him about like feeling guilty. And he was like, we would have been just as sad if it had been you. And it was like the kindest thing he'd ever said to me. So he was like very compassionate in that moment. But it's funny because like everybody, like you're a Marine, you're supposed to be tough. And I feel like especially male Marines have this idea of like this tough person they're supposed to be. But when it comes down to it,
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, emotions are going to come through regardless. I mean, I think it takes a lot of experience to be able to handle that shit in a manner that comes across honestly morbid. Like if you can handle that and not show emotion, you've probably been through a lot of shit.
Yeah, you've shut the switch off.
And the only reason I relate to that is, I spent 10 years doing EMS and fire, and I dealt with death every day. Eventually, you find a way to just compress it and shut it off. And now I'm kind of paying the consequences of that. And I'm trying to learn how to turn it back on and figure that out. So, but it's not a good thing. It's healthy to show your emotions. It's healthy to sit there and be able to deal with that. Even the survivor's guilt, like, that's healthy. I mean,
I was going to say that emotion and that energy has to get out somehow, even though you think you're suppressing it or cutting it off. It's still finding its way out in some form.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you have to deal with it. You can't just bottle it up, because eventually it's just going to build up until you can't build up anymore, and it's got to go somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's a very hard thing for a lot of vets to deal with.
That's why you find a lot of drinking and anger and fighting, and because it's finding its way out.
Yeah, it's a boiling pot.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually it's going to boil over, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even like excessive, like workaholics. I feel like that's another outlet a lot of veterans use, is like overachieving and workaholic, and like, I'm not going to deal with my shit. I'm going to focus on working.
I feel like I'm being attacked personally right now.
Yeah, my boss would disagree, but I work my ass off all the time.
I'm working like 3 jobs right now and trying to like just keep afloat. Yeah. It's great.
I have this real bad habit of like, you know what? I should just do this also. So I just keep on adding shit, and I do a whole lot of a little bit of each one of those.
I like that. I like it. That's my kind of work ethic.
You can't put up 100% into just one. You got to put a little bit in everything.
Yeah.
Nah, TJ whole asses everything. He's
I don't half-ass anything. I'm just whole ass all the time. We're trying to figure out, like, I'm pretty sure I'm all fuck around, or maybe I'm all find out. We haven't figured that part out yet, but I'm 100% on one end of it.
He's
What's my
100% one of them.
Say is like, I don't know. Let's see what happens.
I'm glad it's not just me.
Yeah, right.
We're just gonna find out how this goes, because I have no idea.
I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out as I go.
That's not a right now problem. It's a problem for when it becomes a real fucking problem.
Yeah, this is a future Derek problem. I'll deal with it when we get there.
I have better coping skills at that point.
Yeah, hopefully I've learned something by then.
But the trick is you haven't.
Really, that is my problem. I do. I sit there. I'm telling you, I'm a winger. I wing everything.
I was just texting about that today. I was like, sometimes winging it doesn't work as well. You got to plan a little bit.
Yeah, you had just messaged me that before the show. You were like, I wing it too much, and I probably shouldn't. I should plan. I feel the same way. I wing a lot of things. I should probably just plan ahead and be on top of things, but it doesn't happen. Never happens.
But look at us now, fucking killing it.
I like to have a general plan, but I usually stay pretty flexible because shit never works out as you plan.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I look at things. Yeah, it's like I've got a general idea of what I'm doing. I just don't think it's going to go that way. So I'm open.
Yeah. You just feel safe for a minute thinking, yeah, this is going to go this way.
Yeah, it's like my day-to-day. It was like, I have nothing going on after I get done doing my second job. And then bingo, bango, I had stuff going on after my second job. So, but I was open for it. I planned to have no clue what was going to happen with my day. That's my plan. My plan is to never know what's going to happen.
I mean, does anybody know what's going to happen?
No, I don't think anyone does.
People like to pretend they do.
Yes, they do. So we got a little bit of the good and the bad. Did anything else happen in the Marine Corps experience?
Yeah, lots of stuff. When I got back from Iraq, I got sent to K5, and we were all kind of reeling from what it, losing and getting back from Iraq. You're still just trying to adjust, find your new normal, all that good stuff. We all kind of dispersed into different areas. So I was, in new leadership, new people. I wanted to go on a MEU to Australia. And that same staff sergeant that had been so kind to me for that one moment told me that the shit, MU is not a place for a woman. He was like, I'm protecting you. He'll thank me later. So they went to Australia without me and left me on K5. And the irony of it is that I was assaulted at K5 by an Air Force veteran. I'm not going to go into the story, and I didn't tell anybody for years and years after, because a couple months before that had happened, a fellow female Marine, she had just come in. She was a new boot. She was on foster. And I remember briefly meeting her, talking to her about how nervous she was. And this is heartbreaking. She was a virgin, and she came into the fleet being really nervous and just not knowing much about life or the world or boys or anything. And she reported a rape like 2 months later, and nobody believed her. I remember sitting in the office and it being announced, and everybody, all the guys around me were like, oh, that's bullshit. She's just embarrassed she got caught, blah, blah, blah. Like, nobody believed her. Nobody even knew her. And so when it happened to me, I was like, well, I'm not telling anybody. No, I don't want to be criticized or have my life broken down into pieces, like why I deserved it or didn't happen. So I didn't tell anybody. Not until like 2 years after I got out, when I finally talked to a therapist. So yeah, that happened in K5. And then I met my future husband. And I remember, hindsight, right? So I think I'd been so broken down by that point that I was so shocked that this man loved me and wanted to be with me. And I didn't hook up with him or anything. And he thought that was so amazing. That made me special. And I'm just like, I just want to get to know you. And we ended up getting married. And I remember when he proposed, in the back of my mind, I was like, you better do it, because nobody else is going to want to. It was not healthy. So yeah, we did that. And then he went back to the States, and then I PCS'd and went to where he was. And I broke up with him 6 times. I didn't even realize this until I went through the timeline with my therapist years later. I had broken off our engagement 6 times before we actually got married. So it's like I knew that it wasn't the right thing, but there was that fear, the worthiness that we talked about earlier. There was that fear that if I didn't do this, I wasn't going to have another chance.
Wow.
So I went through it, and it broke me. Like, I lost myself in that marriage, and he was a little bit controlling. Like when he deployed, half of our marriage we were apart because of deployments. But he was like, when he was gone, I could only hang out with a certain friend. I could only go to certain places. I had to report every penny I spent. A little bit controlling, yeah. And then when what happened, it just broke us. We didn't have a solid foundation to stand on, so we crumbled.
Oh,
And
that makes
I
sense.
got out in June. The incident happened in September. We moved to his parents' house in October. He asked me for a divorce 3 days after Christmas, and I was out like 2 weeks later. I went down to Florida. His mom actually drove the U-Haul because I couldn't function. I wasn't functioning. Like, I would just randomly cry for no reason. I would try to hug him, and he wouldn't hug me. He'd walk around me. Like, I remember we were laying in his childhood bedroom, and I was crying at night, and it got on his arm, and he woke up and did this, and he was like, if you're gonna cry, you need to go to the end of the bed.
Well, that's fucked up.
I sat on the floor at the end of the bed. I'm laughing because it's so fucked up. But yes, I was not in a good place, and I lost it. It was a very bad place, and I don't remember any of 2010 because I drank most of it away. And then I went inpatient in 2011, and it wasn't a good program. And I don't know if because I just wasn't ready to deal with anything, or if it was just a shit program. And then in 2012, I found a nonprofit called Focus Marine Foundation in Missouri, and they help veterans. And it was kind of my,
we know about them.
Yep.
yeah, cool. Yeah, so they were kind of my kick in the butt that like what you're doing isn't working.
Right.
And it wasn't a fix all be all. Like I didn't miraculously turn around, but it was kind of my wake up call that I wasn't doing what I needed to be doing and I wasn't okay. I was very suicidal. I didn't think I was worth anything. So suicide was a huge factor at that point in my life. Actually, right after the incident, I had a razor to my wrist when my ex-husband walked into the bathroom. I was sitting in the bathtub because, you know, us women, we don't want to make a mess.
Yeah.
I was laying in the bathtub with a razor to my wrist, and he walked in and found me. And he picked me up and carried me to the bed and held me as I cried until I fell asleep. And that was the last time he ever held me. So it's kind of like a bittersweet thing to remember because he did care, but it was all fucked. But then in 2013, I remember I was drunk driving and I started, you know, those exits that kind of go up into like a bridge almost.
Yeah.
I started accelerating. I was just going to launch myself off. And then last minute I slammed on the brakes. And then maybe it was 2012, 2013. Maybe like 6 months later, I was back at Focus because I was trying to be a mentor. And somebody told me, you know, you really should be doing better by now. And it was somebody that I thought that I was close to. And it just tore me up because I was trying. Like I thought I was, you know, doing a little better, but I wasn't. And so I was walking to the lake. I was going to drown myself. And one of the nurses stopped me and said, "What are you doing?" And we sat down on the steps and just chatted for like an hour. So it was just a bad time in my life. I was so lost. I didn't know how to
It
deal with
got you where you are today.
what got me to where I am today.
Well, but it got you where you are today.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were asking me how did I get out of that shit.
No, we'll get there. We're there, I think. So you have the Focus Marine Foundation.
Yeah.
And you've talked,
Girl.
we were talking before the show, you had a lot of other steps that got you there too. So let's talk about those.
Yeah. And I
what
think
else
that's
got you
important.
there?
I think that's important to share is that like it is not a one-stop shop. Like you don't just like go to one program and I'm all better now. You don't just have one treatment or, you know, it's a process. Like, especially depending on, I remember my therapist told me one time, with everything you've been through, it's a miracle that you're not a homeless crack whore, which is kind of funny because every time I'm like struggling, I'm like, well, at least you're not a homeless crack whore. No offense to homeless crack whores. But
I say it to myself every day, though, honestly. Like,
at least you're not a homeless crack whore. Doing something right. But yeah, so it's not, I think that's something, and I think a lot of veterans are guilty of putting that on each other too, is that like we go through these programs and some programs work better for other people. Like people find their niche, they find these things that they love, it pulls them out. We're all at different levels in our, like we're all at different places in our journey, in our healing process. So it's like, don't let that drag you down if you're not like all better because of one program that helps somebody else. Yeah. It's not because you're too broken.
Yeah, everybody's different too. So some things might click with you that wouldn't click for me or Derek, you know, or and vice versa.
Right.
Some things might click for Derek that wouldn't click for me, and that's why, like, I 100% agree with what you're saying right now. It's not a one-stop shop, because if that doesn't work for you, don't think that, well, that didn't work, so none of these other programs are going to work, or nobody else is going to be able to help me.
Right.
You know, give it a shot and see what works for you.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to keep trying. You got to keep looking for something or some, you know, And I ended up finding the first thing I found. Well, focus obviously kind of kicked me in the butt, woke me up a little bit. Um, so I call them my kick in the butt. And then that was 2012. Um, and obviously it didn't fix everything. I still struggled for several years. In 2015, I finally decided to pursue music full time. Music's always been like a place of joy for me. I love singing. It's like this energy builds up in my body and I can't get it out unless I sing. And up to that point, I'd been doing drunken karaoke, which, was kind of counterintuitive, but I love singing. And in 2015, I decided to pursue it seriously. And I found this, I was in Charleston at the time. I was going to Charleston Southern University. And I found this studio to record some songs. And I didn't know how to play any instruments. I just wrote some lyrics down and had a melody in my head. And we recorded these songs. I was like, well, that was kind of cool. That was fun. I never released them. But then I found Creative X. And in 2016, February, I think, I went out to Nashville. They gave me a guitar. They brought me into this writing room. We wrote a song about the lioness, about Jen. And I was like, there's a better way to do this with music. There's a healthier way. And so they kind of guided me towards a healthier outlet musically. And in 2016, I also found and I'm not going to say who they are because I had kind of a weird experience, but I hiked the Appalachian Trail with a group of veterans. It wasn't the most supportive group, and I kind of went my own way towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't call myself a true through hiker because I didn't hike every mile, but I hiked from Georgia to Maine, and I hiked more than that because I went on a lot of side trails. And I used the outdoors to heal. And while I was hiking, I carried a Martin backpacker guitar and learned how to play guitar.
That's
And
awesome.
I wrote my first songs out on the trail. I remember sitting by a lake in Maine writing a song about my life called Miracle Baby. And it was just about, like, one of the lines is like, I should not be alive. I should not be so strong. I should have died over and over, died inside over and over. And it's just like raw. So I healed a lot through that. And I decided this is where I get out. This is where I heal. So I pursued
Right.
music. And when I got back from the Appalachian Trail, I was with my sister for a few months, kind of regrouping. And then I moved to Colorado and I started gigging almost right away. And I've been gigging ever since. And I've been trying to work on my skills, my songwriting, my guitar, just singing, everything. And I've been trying to navigate it. I feel like I got a late start in life with music. Just trying to learn as much as I can and see where it leads me and just leaning into it.
Well, from what I've listened to, you're amazing.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I mean,
I was listening to some of your music, and it's pretty damn good, I'll say. But also, I want to say that you can't say that you didn't do the full hike because you said you went from Georgia to Maine. That sounds like a pretty damn long hike to me.
I was
Yeah.
also going to say you broke at your feet too.
Yeah,
So you're
both of them.
Yeah.
both
So
of
I
them.
had some medical issues and I was dealing with alcohol issues still, and just like it was a struggle. But I do remember there was a moment during the hike where, so I had a friend, Harmony, in Missouri. She was a vocal coach and she was one of my best friends, and she ended up committing suicide. She had an abusive husband, and she'd given birth to her fourth child, which I got to be in the room, which was crazy. I'd never seen a child birth before. And I remember she was holding the baby and then something else came out after, and I didn't know that there was something else that came after. I started freaking out, and she was like just laughing because it was her fourth child,
That damn placenta.
Yeah. Oh God. I was like, I don't know if I want babies. That's a lot.
That's too much.
We were very close, and she ended up killing herself, which was heartbreaking. And I had moved away by that. It was like a year after I had moved back to South Carolina. in 2015, and I read about it on Facebook, which was heartbreaking. But I remember I was hiking the Appalachian Trail, and there was this moment where I felt like both Jen and Harmony were like walking with me. And it was just like this peaceful, beautiful, like the trees were just like golden and green, and it was just the breeze was perfect, and I felt so peaceful. So it was those kind of moments on the trail that, like, I don't give a shit if I didn't walk every fucking mile. I wasn't out there to be ultra hiker, pro, through hiker. I was out there to work through my shit and to experience nature and music and heal. And so that part was kind of disappointing, that I felt like the group that I was out there with, I couldn't lean on them in that sense. I remember one of the ladies that was out there, she looked at me one day. She was like, "Why don't you just go home? You're not even hiking."
Oh,
and I was like, "I just lost 23 pounds from hiking. What do you mean I'm not hiking?" She's like, "I don't even see you out on the trail." I'm like, "See you either, but I'm not over here telling you to go home."
Yeah. It's not about the miles, it's about the journey, bitch. Fuck off.
I know.
Get out of here.
But in her defense, she was going through her own shit. So hurt people, right? So
Yeah, that's fair.
moving on.
So you did this hike. You had, all right, so let's recap here. We had Focus Marine Foundation.
Yep.
Creative Vets.
Yep.
And then I know you wanted to talk about some more of these foundations or groups that you've been a part of.
Yeah, Advancing Warriors.
All right,
So,
let's talk about them.
Yeah, so Creative Vets was what got me started on the healthy music path. It gave me that kind of ammunition to pursue music professionally. And I got these tattoos when I decided I was like, well, now I'm tattooed, so I can't be a poser.
I'm very glad you did.
Thank you. But yeah, so like right after I got back from the Appalachian Trail, I moved to Colorado and I started gigging. And okay, I take that back. When I was in South Carolina, I did some open mics, and my sister, she had this tap house down the road that she was friends with the owners, and they were like, if you can learn 3 hours worth of material, we'll give you a gig. And I knew how to play like 3 songs. So
I really slow.
I practiced for like 2 months every day, and I learned 3 hours, probably 4 hours worth of material, and I had my first gig with them. And I remember playing, and they loved it, and they brought me back again. And the second time I was there, another artist came in, and he kind of got up on stage, and I was like, baby brand new to guitar, so I struggled through a little bit. But he played, and I sang, and the owner came up to me crying, and I didn't know if I should be insulted or not, but he said, "You sound so much better when you're not playing guitar." And I was like, I know, because I don't have to think about the guitar.
Yeah, I can
focus. Exactly. That sounds like everybody that's ever sang and tried to play guitar.
It was just
I can't do either, so.
I totally can relate to that. My buddy sat there and was like, if you can learn an hour worth of music, you can open for me. And I was like, deal. And I spent like 2 months trying to figure out how to play an hour worth of music. And he's like, can you play a little bit more? And I was like, no, man. It took me forever to learn this.
You can do it.
Yeah, I ended up having to do it. So that happened.
Like, am I allowed to talk to people? Like, does that count as part of my time?
Yeah. What if I just did? What if
really
I'm going to do
shit? It might be entertaining, but
45 minutes of this is going to be a stand-up gig. So,
right.
Just so
tell a really long story before every song.
Yeah, this song that I didn't write is going out to so and so.
Which reminds me of this one time.
Which reminds me of this one time at band camp.
My buddy TJ really liked his flute,
Yeah.
Oh, no. Pull a flute out of your back pocket.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to getting on track here. Not about me and my flute.
Lord, I don't even remember where we were.
Well, we were talking about you just played a gig, your gig, and then you got to just sing.
Oh yeah.
And
I did my first gig in South Carolina, and then I moved to Colorado, and then I started gigging full time, and it was a lot because I don't know if y'all have noticed, but the music community can be very guarded. Like, I don't know who they think they are, but they think they are the ones that are going to judge whether you're worthy to be there or not.
yeah,
Have you put in enough time? Are you talented enough? Do you know enough people? It's
no, I'm
kind
not, and I keep trying anyway.
of you
I
just
will
gotta.
say though, like I don't think they have a very good taste in music, which is really weird for the music people, the community or whatever.
Well, unfortunately, I think the music business cares more about the money than the music.
Yeah,
But there are a lot of people in the music industry who love music.
yeah,
And
I
so
think
Right.
so.
you got to sift through and you'll find them. They're there. There's a lot of talent. There's so much talent out there. It's insane.
Oh, there's
That's
just
one thing
a
I've
talent.
noticed, like traveling around everywhere. It's like, I love Nashville. There's so much talent. There's cool people, cool connections, but like, they are not the end all be all. There is a lot of talent in this world. And there's a lot of cool cities. Some of my favorite artists I've randomly found in like the small town North Dakota. I don't know.
Yeah, I would
It's
say
just,
one of my favorite artists is one of my best friends here in town, and he had us deal with like MGM records or whatever, and then pissed it away because he got too drunk and too high. And
I feel like that's like a qualifying factor for a lot of artists, though.
The good
yeah,
ones, anyway,
he
right?
learned his lesson, but he's one of my favorite artists for sure, and he's so good. He's so talented. It's just you're right. There's so much talent out there. It's ridiculous.
A lot of the talented artists deal with that, though. It's like that tortured genius thing where, I
Yeah,
mean, if you look at a lot of the famous artists who die so young due to drug overdoses or depression or suicide,
you're
it's
right.
like the tortured genius is very relevant in the music industry, which is
Sad.
sad. So much talent. But a lot of those songs speak to people because it comes from such a raw place.
Right. Well,
Right.
it's real too. It's not just a mainstream, you know, back roading in my truck with my girl
No
or
copy.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got a 4x4, a beer, and it may or may not be Bud Light.
Well, not anymore. There's like a war against Bud Light.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm avoiding this subject.
Noted. All right, moving on.
It happens. So you were working towards advancing warriors. Is that right?
Yeah, so when I got to Colorado and I was playing music and stuff, I heard about, how did I hear about Ellie? Let me go back into my brain.
You got this.
We believe in you.
I remember. Okay, so I was going to be a Pilates instructor. I taught Pilates every Wednesday to my Marines when I was in.
What haven't you done?
Right.
I never got certified because of my health issues, which I can go into or not go into, but I was training to be a Pilates instructor and I wanted to open my own studio. So I went to this female veteran entrepreneurship conference in San Diego through VWise. I don't know if y'all heard of VWise.
Nope.
Nope.
I can't remember. It's veteran women something. It's women veteran entrepreneur VWise.
You writing that down? I'll play money there.
Yep.
If they're watching this, you're gonna be like, "Come on!" I can't remember. It was a long time ago. But I went down to San Diego and I went to the conference, and I ended up meeting a retired colonel, Jill Chambers, who's one of the most amazing women I've ever met. Google her for sure. But her husband was a big country artist in the 90s, Michael Peterson.
Oh,
I don't know if you heard the song Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie.
Yeah.
One of his big ones. So he was there, which I thought was kind of like serendipitous because I was there for the Pilates thing, but he was a music artist. So I got to sit down and talk to him. And I talked about my music goals and kind of how I was new to it and I was learning, but I didn't know if I was too late to the game and all this stuff. So he gave me like a breakdown of what he thought. And one of the interesting things he told me was that his A&R rep had told him that they were instructed not to pay attention to anybody if they didn't have at least 10,000 followers. I was like, okay, so like if you come across this amazingly talented person who has like 100 followers, just fuck it because they don't have followers. Like it should be a valid talent in the music, right? But
Right.
in this day and age, I guess there's so much talent and so much access that in order to sift through it all, they focus on the people with big followings.
Right. All right. So VOIs
Yeah,
is Veteran Women Igniting the Spirit of Entrepreneurship.
there you go.
The same one you're thinking of.
Yes, that is them.
That's what Google told me. So
all right.
for-
That's
for
completely
anybody
different from
interested.
how I spelled that.
Yeah, they're amazing. They do so much, and the conference was amazing. And I didn't follow through with the tools because I was dealing with my own shit, but many women have gone on to do great things because of them and with them. So, yeah, highly recommended. So I met Jill Chambers, and then Jill Chambers and I connected. She's amazing. I still text her sometimes, just updates and seeing how she's doing. She's actually part of a new book that was published called Women of Grit and Grace, I think it's called. It's on my Instagram, I posted. But she's highlighted in that book. And she connected me with her friend, Dr. Elizabeth Stevens, who lived in Colorado. So when I got back to Colorado, I connected with Elizabeth Stevens, and she became one of my best friends. And she runs a nonprofit called Advancing Warriors, which is a nonprofit that addresses PTSD through biblical principles. And the first program that you go through is called Tribe. It's an 8-week program, and you do small groups once a week for 8 weeks, and you can do all women, all men, or co-ed. The one that I did, I was co-ed, which actually was really beautiful because when I talked about my sexual trauma, I met men who had dealt with sexual trauma, which had never really occurred to me that men went through that too. I mean, looking back, like, why wouldn't that be a thing? But
Right.
it was kind of beautiful. And 2 of the men that talked about that in the group, it was the first time they told anybody. So it was like kind of freeing for them to be able to talk about it. So it was a space of no judgment, true grace and love. And it was just this beautiful community that I'd never experienced before.
Right.
And I was able to reconnect with God. I was able to find my worth through God, my identity through God. I felt like it was like a huge turning point in healing and finding my self-worth again. And Ellie is just amazing. She's so knowledgeable. She's a medically retired Air Force major. I'm not going to tell her story because it's hers to tell, but she actually just published a book. You can read about it. It's called Unshackled. She released in October, and actually my testimony's in there under a pseudonym.
Did you say her name was Ellie?
Dr. Elizabeth Stevens. And she's based out of Colorado. Yeah.
Got it.
So they mostly do things in Colorado, but they do, I mean, you are able, like if say you're at a church in Nebraska, you can go down to Colorado and be trained as a facilitator and then be able to teach whole tribe, at your church or with your peer group or whatever. But I'm actually doing a group starting in July with a group of women. So I'm really excited.
As I say, another program you may be interested in is the Crucible Project. They also run a lot of crap out of Colorado. I guess not crap. It's just a general term I use. They run a lot of things out of Colorado as well, but it's also very much like dealing with not just PTSD, but trauma in general through biblical principles and learning. They make you face your trauma. It was very freeing experience for me as well. Getting to do that, where they make you face it, and they make you do a lot of like team building stuff, and you're doing this with strangers, and there's just something freeing about getting to tell your story, and they kind of force you to tell your story. And I don't know, like you said, I mean, they do it through God and they do it through religion, and there's just something about it. So I get what I get what you're getting from the Advancing Wars. I think they sound very similar in a lot of aspects. So I think if you ever got a chance to do a Crucible, I would highly recommend it.
I will look into it. I love that. And I think that's where the beauty of it lies, is that like realizing that my depression, and I'm not simplifying it because there's so many layers to this, but it's spiritual warfare.
Mm-hmm.
The devil wants to keep you down, and the only one that can help you combat that is Jesus.
I'm trying to, because it may not be called the Crucible Project anymore, but
another veteran Christian retreat I did was Mountains Move. It's in Buena Vista, and they bring you out solo or with a group into the off-grid mountains of Buena Vista. You do jeeping, you go up to like 13,000 feet, and so I did this after when did I do this? Was it 2020? It was during van life. It was last year. Oh my God, my memory. I had just come back from Montana, and I was on my way back to the East Coast, and I stopped in Colorado for a week, and I did this. And it was another turning point. Like, one of my favorite days was we went up to 13,000 feet, and they tell you take a rock and like launch it off the mountain and like let go, like pray to God and let go of your whatever you're holding on to. And I went over and I like picked up a boulder and I hooked it onto my shoulder. And he started laughing. The guy who runs it, he was like, well, nobody's ever picked up a boulder before. I'm like, well, I got shit to let go. So I walked over to the ledge, and I had to like dip down and like hawk it off. And before I let it go, I said my prayer. I said, Lord, I can't handle it anymore. I'm giving it to you. Like, it's too much. It's too heavy. And I launched it off, and then you hear the thud when it hits the bottom. And up to that point, like the whole week, I'd been looking for heart rocks. I love collecting rocks. So I collect heart rocks, and I couldn't find any. And as soon as I hucked that boulder off the mountain, I turned around, I took 2 steps, I looked down, and there's a heart rock. And the rest of the day, I found 12 more.
No kidding.
Damn.
And we hiked to a mountain, Alpine Lake. And while we were out there, it started snowing. And Heath reminded me of, and I can't remember the chapter, but it was when Jesus says that your sin will be as white as snow. Like, you are forgiven, your sin will be as white as snow. He reminded me of that. It was just like the most beautiful day. It was God reminding me that he's there and that he loves me and that my sin is as white as snow because he's paid the price for me.
That's incredible.
It was amazing. So Mountains Move, another one.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's these moments along your journey that like.
Yeah, it seems like you have so many. So we had Folks Foundation, Creative Vets, Advancing Warriors. I know you have another one.
I know I do too. Hold on, let me see. Creative Vets, Advancing Warriors. I was going to tell you about Operation Lightshine. They're not a veteran organization, but I'm a influencer. Yeah, because of my weird abduction in Florida. I don't know, like human trafficking kind of hits home for me because I realize how close I am to it. But Operation Lightshine, they are based out of Nashville, and they combat human trafficking, child exploitation. So they do a lot. They partner with like police forces and Homeland Security, and like they do the damn thing.
Which is awesome.
I feel like that was not the right phrase to say there, but
I mean, you get what you get here.
They're another
It sounds
amazing.
like they're doing a lot of amazing things, which is what we like to hear.
And if
Yeah,
you
we
follow
like to
them, they
get
share
that
a
out
lot.
for other people to hear about these places too, that they can get into and be involved with.
Yeah.
We're all about trying to network and build these relationships with different places. So anywhere we can help, we're happy to, because that's part of the trauma thing. You know, a lot of people deal with that trauma, and if we have somewhere that we can send them to get some help, I mean, that's what we want.
Yeah. Try it all and see what works.
Exactly.
Yeah, hell yeah.
You know, throw a bunch of shit at the wall and see what sticks.
Well, I mean, you nailed it earlier when you said like it's not just a one shop stop or however you worded it, but there or one stop shop or whatever. But because different people react, everybody's perception is different. Everybody reacts to things differently. So what might work for one won't work for the other, and you got to keep trying until you figure out what works for you. Because if you don't, then you're failing yourself. At the end of the day.
Yeah, and
Right.
understand that healing isn't linear. That just
Right.
because you take 2 steps forward doesn't mean you're going to not struggle. Like I've talked to a lot of veterans. They're like, well, it worked for a little bit, but I fell back and did this, and now I'm a piece of shit, and I'll never heal, and I'm just fucked up forever. And I'm like, that's not true. You have to keep fighting that fight.
Yeah, progress isn't always this uphill climb. It's sometimes you're going to have those downhills. You're going to have a little bit of an up, and you're going to go back down. It's not the straight line, like you said. It's not linear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's
another
a
thing
beatable
that
way to
worked,
look at it.
especially recently, is I started doing trauma release exercises. And I don't know if you guys have heard of them.
I can't say I have.
Is that like a breathing exercises and?
Part of it is breathing, but there's a very specific exercise that I started doing. I started going to a practitioner. I did 2 sessions with her, and this is very recent for me. And it's very exciting for me because I've felt like a huge difference in my mostly anxiety, my sleep, and I don't know, like my mood and overall pain in my body. The day after I did these exercises, I remember feeling just so chill, like so relaxed, like nothing could bother me that day. And up till then, like I'd had like this anxiety that would just like kind of be bubbling under the surface, you know? And it's like your shoulders feel tense or some random thing could like just throw you off. And ever since I've started doing, like, I don't feel it. Like
That's
like
awesome.
the worries are still there, but I'm not like emotionally invested in them like I was. It's like I'm
Right.
just aware of them and I'm able to like address them as needed. But
Yeah.
it's very simple exercises, and I did it with my sister and I did it with my mom and my aunt when I visited them recently. And like it kind of gives you like very vivid, weird dreams. But the idea behind it is like your body stores trauma physically.
Mhm.
This energy like builds up in your body. And when you do the TRE, it trains your brain to release that energy and to cut. It has a lot to do with your vagus nerve. I don't know if you guys have heard of the vagus nerve.
Oh, absolutely.
It helps to regulate the vagus nerve. It's kind of the whole premise behind it. And you do these exercises to get your legs tired, and then you lay on your back, you put your feet together, and you kind of let them relax into the butterfly. And then you do 3 deep belly breaths, and you raise your knees just a little bit. And for 15 minutes, you raise your knees just a little bit every minute or two, and your legs will start shaking, like vibrating. Sometimes your whole body will vibrate, or you'll get like twitching in your torso, and you're just supposed to let it happen. And that shaking is what trains your brain to release that energy.
Right.
One of the most beautiful things that happen is I'm a singer, right? And for the past, I don't know how many years, like maybe 2 years, I've steadily been getting like this tightness in my throat where it just like hurts to speak, it hurts to sing. There's a hoarseness. It just, my range was being limited. I went to the studio a week after I had done the TRE exercise to record a second song. I'd been with this producer one song before, and he was like, whatever you're doing, it's really working. And I told him about TRE, and I was like, my range was returning. It didn't hurt to sing. I could still do the raspiness when I wanted to, but it wasn't like there all the
Right.
time. I just felt so relaxed, like, which is important when you're singing. And like my throat felt relaxed. I didn't have that tenseness. And I believe that like the energy had been stored in my vocal cords.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, I know, I sound like a hippy dippy right now, but
Oh
it's
no, you're fine. While we're throwing shit at the wall and letting it stick, another thing, if you want to try PIMP treatment, pulse electromagnetic field therapy, if you haven't heard of it,
no, what is that?
they take like coils and it basically sends like a kind of electric pulses through your body, and it returns the like at the molecular level, it realigns things. I've been doing that here. They've been doing a lot of studies on it for like anxiety, depression, PTSD, that it works to help with that, and just in general health. Like my shoulder, I've got shoulder problems. I do a treatment. I can't. I've got full arrangement of my shoulder back. It's pretty wild. Uh, it's another thing worth looking into, and I only have to promote that because it really has been working, and we've got a good family friend that does the treatments for us, and it has been. It's been incredible just to see the difference and the change. I had people like 2 weeks after I started doing it, they were like, "You just seem different." And I was like, "Yeah, sure."
Isn't that
You know
crazy?
what I mean?
I feel like that's like the energy, like manifesting, like that trauma manifests in your shoulder, the trauma manifests in my throat. And probably those electromagnetic pulses are like help regulating that vagus nerve.
Yeah, it's the
And
whole
really,
thing's wild, and I think there is a lot to that because when you're trying to treat PTSD and that you put the pad on the back of your neck or like at the base of your skull, and I don't know, there's something about it. It's wild.
PTSD manifests in the brain. It like shrinks your whatever that part of the brain's called. What's the
The
little two
the
lobes called in the back?
the brain stem essentially, but the what the heck is that called?
It's like the two
This,
little bits right here.
like the cerebral cortex kind of thing, something like that.
Something.
I should know this.
I should know this. I'll remember it after we're done.
Yeah, that's how it goes. But yeah, it's definitely something worth looking at. I'm all for like trying to find any treatment I can to like help, and
Yeah.
anything healthy, especially
Yeah.
that's not drugs and
Yeah.
treatment, through doing stuff like that. So
It's just, it blows my mind. This simple little exercise made such a huge difference.
yeah,
But it makes sense if you think about it, like scientifically, it's like,
it makes sense.
yeah.
Well, since we're talking about energies and stuff, then I think a lot of people need to go outside on a sunny day, barefoot, walk around in the grass, barefoot, and just, I think some people call it grounding or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
grounding.
Kind of releases that. You might take some mushrooms or whatever, but maybe that's just me. I don't know.
I've heard good things about mushrooms, but
Yeah, I was gonna say I have too, and they're also doing studies on DMT, and like one major trip resets the entire brain.
Yeah, like I'm not a Scientologist, but like it makes sense, Like,
I have a Marine Corps buddy who would. Well, I have two Marine Corps buddies that talk a lot about how psychedelics save them.
Yeah, I've
too
heard a
scared
lot
to
of good
try psychedelics.
things.
I don't want to go on that brain trip just yet.
I'm not gonna say I'm opposed.
I've always been scared of drugs. I've tried marijuana and that's it, and I don't like how I feel on it. So
That's fair. That's very reasonable. I'm gonna say it's helped me tremendously in the past. I can't do it now, but I did have very good luck with it just because my brain runs off in so many places. It helped me kind of calm down as long as I did it in like a good normal dose.
yeah. One of these days I'll be able to do it, but I have like at least 3 separate entities that are, very hardcore about ruining my fucking life if I decide to try to better myself in those kind of ways.
oh no, like drug testing.
Yeah. They're always trying to keep us down, man.
Nobody wants us to heal.
I'm telling you.
No, there's so many things out there. And, I'm telling you, like it's worth trying everything as far as I'm concerned.
That's what I'm saying. You got to try everything that you're willing to try, because I'm not willing to try psychedelics just yet.
I don't blame you. I really don't.
I'm not judging anybody who does. Like, do you?
Yeah.
Or as my
Yeah.
sister says,
I mean,
do boo boo.
Yeah. I was
you
gonna
know,
say
I
you do
can't be any
you,
more
boo.
fucked up than I am already. So like, shit, send it. Let's do it.
Yeah. What's the
You know?
worst thing that's gonna happen? I'm gonna be more of a dick.
Yeah. So you know, let's be honest. Not sure if
It's
that's
like,
gonna
you can take this hit of
happen.
acid, might
Yeah.
not have.
That's hard pressed.
Right?
The VA's tried like 46 different meds. I'm not opposed to trying anything at this point, you know.
They're not strong enough. They're not the right kind of meds.
Yeah, they're not hitting the mark.
So not try hard enough.
Yeah, they're just
I just started one new med, which I was not on any meds. I just took vitamins. But I just got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and lupus.
oh no.
And so they gave me a medication because I have like a whole host of autoimmune disease. But I feel like I'm taking this medicine just to see how it helps. But I'm also doing like anti-inflammatory diet. I'm being active. I'm doing the TRE. I'm trying to like approach it as holistically as I can, because I do feel like the autoimmune is a manifestation of my trauma.
Right. I think so too.
Yeah.
Which leads to ice baths. Ice baths are up there now.
Okay, you're like the third person who's mentioned ice baths to me last month.
They're pretty amazing. I was anti ice baths until I did it for a while.
Because it's fucking cold. I get it.
I hate cold. I hate cold so much.
Love the cold.
But I've been doing it, and it's like 10 minutes, whatever, however long you do, where you're not in your mind. You're just kind of, it frees you of any like worries you have, and then it releases these brown proteins, and it actually starts healing like various inflammatory diseases in the body.
Which makes sense. Like if you have an inflamed injury, you put ice on it, right?
Yeah. So it's pretty wild. It's very therapeutic. It helps. I've talked to a ton of people now that it's helped, and it's crazy to see, because it used to be a thing.
I don't know where to go.
I bought a horse tank, 150-gallon horse tank. Fill it with water. Fill it with ice. Boom. When it was cold out, we were doing it in lakes, rivers.
I bet I could.
Yeah, you're going to Alaska, right?
I'm going to Alaska. There's like glaciers in the water there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the fucking ice, dude.
Dip in the water there for 3 to 4 minutes. Get it. It'd be a good time.
Whales, right? There's no sharks in Alaska.
I don't think so. I think there's whales, like beluga whales or something.
Not in the ice water. They don't like cold water either, right? I don't know.
I have no idea.
There's some sort of whale there.
They wouldn't be around ice water. Come on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But no, I don't want to keep you all night. We've actually had this has been really fun. I've had a lot of fun. I could keep you all night, to be honest with you.
I don't mind, but I don't know how long of a podcast you want to try to put out there.
Well, we're here for whatever. We've talked about 800
I haven't talked
things.
about Operation Encore yet.
That was actually next on my list.
That's one. Yeah.
It was actually next on my list. Check it out. I got it right here. Yeah, it's right here.
Words and stuff.
We don't have a script, but I was going through all the projects, and because those are actually 90% notes, 1%. I was like, we got to talk about Operation Encore.
Yeah, they're like a big part of it too. So when I started doing the whole music thing for real, I was in Colorado, and I don't even remember how I heard about Operation Encore. I might have just Googled music for veterans, and I applied in 2019, and then I got accepted in January of 2020, right before the COVID shutdown happened. So we did we didn't get to do any live shows or like events. They were talking about bringing me out to Telluride and all this fun stuff, but none of it happened because of COVID. But we did do a lot of like online songwriting competitions and songwriting lessons, and they try to keep us very active during the COVID thing. So it was really cool. And we did like a lot of Zooms where I got to meet everybody, like we're doing now, like via Zoom. So that was really cool. And then I can't remember. Oh my God, my memory is really bad right now. I'm trying to remember the first time I got to do anything live with Operation Encore. I think it was when I went to Camp Southern Ground. We did a songwriting retreat in Camp Southern Ground. And I got to do like a whole songwriting retreat. Oh, and I did Listening Room. I think that was my first show with Operation Encore, was Listening Room in September in Nashville. So that was really cool. I was so nervous. It was like my first songwriter round, and it was like this huge venue it was like, I think the Listening Room is a big deal in Nashville. And so when I would tell people, oh yeah, I'm playing at the Listening Room, they're like, oh wow, really? How?
That's awesome.
So they were like, Operation Encore. And then we did the songwriting retreat at Camp Southern Ground. And that's where we met Otz Kilcher, who's a Vietnam veteran and a singer-songwriter. And he's the one who invited us out. There's 8 of us that got invited out to Alaska for the summer. And we're going to help him build his new retreat on his homestead. And I can't tell you all the details because they haven't officially launched yet. They're getting all their ducks in a row. But I'm super excited. And I'm you guys know Shannon and Schaefer and all the other people that are going to be out there. There's 8 of us, and we're going to be in the wilderness, chopping down trees.
I'm very excited, and we will be very excited to hear the post event information or post all this happening.
Yeah.
I know you guys.
As it's happening too.
I know Contagion said they're busy until after this has all happened, so they'll have you on after. So we'll get to hear all the after, and maybe we'll just bug you again and ask you if you want to come back on after, because that'd be amazing as well.
I'd love to. Yeah, I'm doing Contagion on June 29th. So that's like a week
awesome.
after. Yeah. But we're doing like the summer solstice concert on the 22nd. And then they're doing like a bunch of after parties. And they're pairing us off at these different venues in town.
That's so cool.
It'll be fun. I'm so excited. But I was like, Alaska, yes, please. I'm going to drive up there and spend the whole summer.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I'd love to go up there. We've got we've got a lot of people that have been there. Sounds fun.
You what?
We've got a lot of people that I've talked to that have been up there, and they've just had a blast. I'd love to go.
Yeah.
So are you driving up there, or are you flying?
Driving in my van.
No kidding.
Yeah, I live in my camper van. I built out a camper van last year from January to April, 4 months. I'd never built anything in my life. And I drove down to Alabama at my aunt's house. I used her garage and I built out this camper van. And I've been on the road for about a year now. And
That's
I'm
crazy.
driving to Alaska. I'm in, where I'm at now. I'm not going to say because OPSEC, but got a house party in Phoenix, and then I'm going to Sedona, Grand Canyon, Zion, and then I've got 2 gigs in Salt Lake City, and then I'm going to Montana, and then I'll be crossing the border into Canada, driving through Alberta up to Calgary. So I'll drive up to Calgary and then Dawson's Creek, and then that's where the Alaskan Canadian Highway, the Alcan, starts, and follow that all the way through the Yukon to.
Man, that's crazy.
The Yukon. I'm talking Canadian already.
Yeah, right there in the Yukon, huh?
Yukon. I'm gonna be in Alaska.
Oh, don't you know?
I'm so bad at accents. I'm not even gonna try.
That sounds amazing, honestly.
Yeah, it really does. If you ever go through Oklahoma or Nebraska at any point, you've got a place to visit, and I can probably get you a show here.
Nice.
I can for sure get you a show here.
I will be. So when I come back down from Alaska, I'm going to be coming back through Canada and then going across the northern part of the U.S. And I'm playing at Vet Fest in Philly in September. And then I got to make my way back across. So I'm going to come back across the middle of the U.S., visit family in Oklahoma, and apparently you too. And then I'll be in Colorado for another fundraiser that I'm playing for.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, if you want a place to play in Nebraska, I've got a place I can probably get you in that. They're pretty awesome.
I love that. I think I actually haven't been in Nebraska yet. I think that's one of the states I haven't been to.
Well, you just as well stop by. We'd love to have you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So, I don't know how you guys do this, but if you want to splash my socials out there,
Yeah,
um,
we'd love to.
Oh yeah, definitely.
follow me on
We'll
Instagram and Facebook at Barbara Sim Music. And then I'm also raising funds for the trip because gas ain't cheap, y'all.
I hear
Right.
that.
But I have a link tree that brings you to my tip jars for that if you feel so inclined.
Well, we'll just
Yeah.
link all of it into the episode info.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we can share it on our Facebook and stuff like that too.
Yeah, and we'll share it on the Facebook and our Instagram and all that. We just started our Instagram, and I'm pretty proud of how well we're doing so far because I'm half retarded, and trying to figure out social media has been rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been working really hard on my Instagram this year, and I've gotten it up a little bit. So, but
We're
it's
right
like
there.
I'm looking good, but all my other accounts I've been kind of neglecting. So, I think
If you want to learn how to like shotgun beers and blow shit up, I'm your guy. But social
I
media and
still
all the
don't
rest
know
of
how
the
to
stuff,
shotgun a beer. I've never been able to shotgun a beer.
dude, like when you come to Oklahoma, hit me up. We'll get you a show somewhere. I got a few places we hit up, and I'll teach you how to shotgun beers and blow shit up. So
Nice.
That's what he knows.
First time.
As for me, I know much less. Man, I'm just winging it through life right now. I'm
Same.
really am. I'm having fun with it, enjoying life the best I can, and that's all we can do.
Some of my most favorite memories are from just winging it.
Yeah, that's most of mine as well. I think that's all of my memories.
that's all
to be
my
honest with
that's all I do.
you. Yeah, that's all I've ever done. So, that being said, yeah, we'll pimp you out. We'll get your information out there. TJ, give your spiel, my man.
Well, like I always say, don't be a cocksucker. If someone reaches out to you and they need some help or whatever, listen to them. Don't just blow them off. Reach out and touch somebody that you served with, somebody that you haven't heard from in a long time. You know, if they share dank ass memes on Facebook and they haven't shared their dank ass memes in a while, hit them up. Just make sure they're doing all right. You know, just it's important to keep contact with your homies and stuff. But on that note, also, I was going to ask you before we leave if you have any specific organizations or just any input in general for female veterans to reach out to, because you know we're trying to that's what we're trying to do is, like Derek said earlier, networking. But I feel like females have a whole lot less um, just outlets in general than males do.
Yeah, no, I don't. If you
Well,
find any, let me know.
well, you
Well,
gave
you
us a
had
couple with the
you had the
VYs and
VYs.
yeah, and stuff
The
like that. So
VYs, yeah, for the female veterans. Ooh, okay, I take that back. I am part of the Military Sisterhood Initiative. It's kind of like a Facebook for female veterans.
okay,
So I'm on there a lot. I just like chat with women, and you can do it like regional. You can chat to women all over. They have a weekly book club. They have an MSD forum. They have so much. I think they're based out of Colorado too. So yeah, they're really cool. It's the Military Sisterhood Initiative, and I think they're an extension of Challenge America.
That's awesome.
awesome, yeah.
They're
That's what we
amazing.
love to hear. And like we always do every episode, what did you take from today's episode? And we'll start with you.
With me.
Yeah. Of course, we're going to freeze now.
Or she's like, you know what? Didn't really take much from you guys. Y'all suck. So
No, she froze. She definitely froze. Well, that being said, TJ, what did you take from tonight's episode?
I mean, personally, I just think we just, as a whole, we still have a whole lot to learn. You know, and need to realize that we need to do better for each other and ourselves. Mainly just as far as like we don't know shit to say for female veterans, you know?
Right.
So something that I think we could all do better at. You?
I would say I took the same thing. I'd also say I'm super grateful that we had her on. I mean, what an amazing episode in my eyes. I can't be more thankful, and it really is eye opening to see how things went for her, and I'm super blessed for this opportunity.
I mean, obviously completely different, experiences than what we had too, But
yeah, it really was. That being said, hit us up on Instagram at Shadowmark Podcast. Made that simple as I could for everybody to find us. Shadowmark Podcast. Boom, you'll find us. Check us out on our Facebook group at the Shadowmark Society of Misfits. And yeah, I think that's about what I got, Also, make sure to like, share, and comment on the episodes. I mean, if you're listening on iTunes or whatever, leave a comment. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. We try to listen, and we try to do better every time we do this show. So
give
us
a review.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. A review. If you're listening on YouTube, same thing. Leave a comment. Give us a like. Follow the page. So thank you guys for listening in tonight. And I guess until next time, thank you.